Once upon a time, near the edge of a vast and mysterious forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his two children, Hansel and Gretel. They had little to live on, and as times grew harder, the woodcutter struggled to provide food for his family. His wife, who was the children's stepmother, was harsh and unkind. One evening, after Hansel and Gretel had gone to bed, she spoke to her husband in a low voice. "We have nothing left," she said. "We must take the children deep into the forest and leave them there. It is the only way for us to survive." The woodcutter was horrified. "How could I abandon my children? The wild animals would surely devour them." But his wife persisted, wearing him down with her cruel reasoning. At last, he reluctantly agreed. Hansel and Gretel, however, had overheard everything. Gretel wept, but Hansel comforted her. "Don't worry, little sister," Hansel whispered. "I have a plan." That night, while their parents slept, Hansel sneaked outside. The moon shone brightly, and he collected shiny white pebbles, filling his pockets. "These will show us the way back home," he thought. The next morning, their stepmother woke them early and handed them each a small piece of bread. "We are going into the forest to gather wood," she said sternly. As they walked, Hansel, who was at the back, dropped a pebble every few steps. Deeper and deeper into the forest they went, until they reached a clearing. The stepmother built a fire and said, "Rest here, children. Your father and I will be back soon." But as the hours passed, no one returned. When night fell, Gretel cried. "We are lost, Hansel," but Hansel smiled softly. "Don't be afraid, Gretel. We only need to wait for the moon to rise." When it did, the light illuminated the white pebbles Hansel had dropped, leading them back home. Their father was overjoyed to see them return, but the stepmother was angry. Soon, hard times struck again. One night, the children overheard their stepmother plotting once more. "This time, we will take them deeper into the forest. They will not find their way back." The next day, Hansel tried to gather more pebbles, but the door was locked. As they were led into the forest, Hansel dropped crumbs from his bread, hoping to use them as a trail. But when the children tried to follow the crumbs later, they found that birds had eaten them all. Lost and hungry, Hansel and Gretel wandered deeper into the forest. After days of walking, they came across a strange sight, a cottage made entirely of gingerbread and sweets. Unable to resist, they began eating it. Suddenly, a voice called out from inside, "Who's that nibbling at my house?" Out came an old woman, who invited the children inside. She seemed kind at first, offering them food and a place to rest. But little did they know, she was a wicked witch who trapped children and ate them. The next morning, the witch locked Hansel in a cage and forced Gretel to do chores, all while fattening Hansel for a dreadful feast. But Hansel was clever. Whenever the witch asked him to stick out his finger to see if he was fat enough, he would hold out a thin bone instead. The witch, who had poor eyesight, was fooled. After weeks of this, the witch grew impatient. "Fat or thin, I will eat him tomorrow," she declared. She ordered Gretel to light the oven, but Gretel, quick-witted as she was, tricked the witch into checking the oven herself. When the witch leaned in, Gretel pushed her inside and slammed the door shut, leaving the evil witch to burn. Gretel freed Hansel, and the two rejoiced. They explored the witch's house and discovered chests full of precious jewels. With their pockets full of treasures, they left the forest and soon found their way home. Their father was overwhelmed with joy to see them, for he had regretted abandoning them. The wicked stepmother was gone, and with the treasure they brought back, they never had to worry about hunger again. And so, Hansel and Gretel lived happily ever after with their loving father.